For many, many years, even I would say a century and a half, Great Britain was one of, if not the leader in hunting around the world. They had a culture of fine firearms and adventurous sportsmen that was paralleled nowhere else. It led to passionate sportsmen around the globe, from America, where we got our roots from Great Britain, to Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and spreading into the rest of Africa. Wherever Englishmen went, they introduced a passion for the lifestyle of hunting. And in many ways, good conservation as well. You know, whether you agree with it or not, the way that certain areas of England have optimized the habitat and so forth for grouse has been spectacularly effective. And it appears that we're in danger of losing that. We're here today to talk with one of our favorite Englishmen, of course, Rob Gearing of Spartan Precision Equipment, but we're not talking about shooting systems this time. We're talking about conservation. Both the animals that we love and hunt, that sustain us and our families and fuel our passion for the outdoors, and conservation of a lifestyle of freedom and firearms ownerships and rights as individual hunters. And that's something that Great Britain is on a very slippery slope on right now. Rob, thank you for joining us first, and thank you for being willing to tackle this very difficult subject.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, Joseph. It's quite a sad subject, actually, and it's quite alarming, the speed and the pace that things are changing in the UK. And I don't pretend to be an expert on this, so I'm sure there'll be open criticism, and I'd be the first person to stick my hand up and say I've got it wrong. But I think we'd be foolish if we didn't acknowledge there's a genuine concern with what's going on in the UK at the moment, and how socialist governments are trying to stem what's part of my life, the way I've grown up.
Sure.
You know, this isn't a sport for me, it's a passion, it's a way of life. And I feel now that those lifestyles are being challenged. I could blame a lot of things for that, but I always say I grew up shooting rabbits with an air gun, and I could take them to my neighbours, and I couldn't think of a neighbour that wouldn't appreciate having those rabbits.
Sure.
Now if I tried that, I'd probably get arrested, Joseph. You know, and maybe you can blame supermarkets for that, for distancing ourselves from food and where it comes from and such like. But it is quite an alarming change at an alarming pace. And particularly what's going on in Scotland now with the socialist governments, they are waging war on people that want to hunt. And I don't say that lightly. I've got many friends up in Scotland that are now worried about their futures, worried about their lifestyle. And that's great if you're in Edinburgh or Glasgow, but Scotland is one giant boggy, marshy place. You can't do a lot with that ground. But what they've done very effectively is produce these places where they can help protect game, Scottish grouse, red deer and such like. And in times to come I can see it where basically private hunters will not be allowed to hunt on those grounds anymore.
And that would be a tremendous shame. I'd like to start kind of, let's call it 50 years ago with you, and walk through some of the chain of events that's led us to where we're at now. Because folks, there was a time when Great Britain exported the finest side-by-side shotguns and rifles in the world, whether you're talking express rifles, those dangerous game rifles for use in Africa and India, shotguns really around the world to discerning sportsmen. And the sportsmen had the rights that we still, at least to a point, enjoy here in the United States. You could go down and configure a firearm. You could have what they called a bespoke firearm, a truly custom-made firearm made specifically for you, fitted to you, tuned to you. You'd go back to the factory several different times. I shouldn't even call it a factory. It wasn't a factory. To the fine gunsmiths. And you would try this firearm as it's in its stages of being built. And they would finesse the dimensions until it was perfect for you.
It was like having a suit made.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah.
Today, well, and back then it was considered an admirable thing to do. It's what a gentleman did.
Yeah,
right?
even there would have been even when I was a kid, I'm 60 now, but even when I was a kid, I couldn't possibly dream of us having to have this conversation.
Sure.
Now. But let's not forget, in my lifetime, we now are no longer allowed to have pistols or semi-automatic rifles. There's a population of probably north of 70 million people that live in the UK. I believe it's 56,000 people have firearms licences. I might be a few thousand now, but it's a tiny, tiny percentage.
Yeah.
And basically London and Glasgow and cities are waging war on anybody that is passionate about that. And I find it really upsetting.
Yeah.
It makes me very angry, actually, because why should we be giving up the things that we believe in?
Exactly. And this is precisely the reason I'd asked you to come on the show and talk about this with us. Folks, I'm a God-fearing man. I'm not as spiritual as I should be often, but I do believe that our Constitution was inspired by a heavenly power here in America. Our Bill of Rights. We could not have the freedoms and the prosperity that we have in this country without the Constitution and the Bill of Rights we have. Now, wherever you fall on the political spectrum, this is something that we just don't address on the podcast, right? We and our listeners share a love of the outdoors and of hunting, and we leave the rest for a discussion at another time, right? And it's enabled a lot of us to be very good friends, wherever we fall on that, in that realm. However, I think every one of us would come down in staunch support for our rights as individuals, as humans, to own firearms, tools of personal protection, and to provide for ourselves, right? And to hunt, as long as we're good stewards of this land, good conservationists. And I can't think of a better country right now, sadly, than the UK, England and its, all of its various entities, to use as an example, a type in a shadow, if you might say that, to forecast what could happen to us if we're not cautious.
Well, look what happened last year, trophy hunting. So they tried to ban people that would go to Africa and wanted to shoot something and bring back their trophy. Now, I won't necessarily agree with trophy being a brilliant word. It's a memory on the wall for me.
Sure.
We've hunted buffalo together.
Yeah.
We don't need the memory on the wall to go through that experience, but it's a lovely thing, and I wouldn't go past that buffalo skull without reminding myself how scary those things can be. But it's basically, it's celebrating that animal's life.
Yes.
Right? So maybe the trophy isn't the right word. We can argue about that, just like sport might not be the right word if you're killing something. For me, it's a passion, right? I love what I do. I love hunting. And I think you grow into hunters, right? And now my view is, I don't need to be the person pulling the trigger to kill something, but I love experiencing those adventures. You might get an opportunity to shoot an elephant next year. I would love to be there, be part of that. I don't need to be the person pulling the trigger.
Sure.
But when people try and stop us doing those things, just let's wind back a bit and have a look at where they banned hunting and what's happened in the areas where hunting is now illegal, right?
Let's do that, and it's kind of funny. I have a nice blued Colt python that I was going to bring tonight. I forgot, but I was going to lay it here in front of us and just watch your reaction, because I know you had one, and you loved it, and you had to give it up.
I grew up with that blued Colt python.
Yeah.
And it was a lovely piece of beautiful engineering that I could look at. And I remember when I was 16 or 17, picking up the magazines as a kid and looking at that. I first bought a 686, and there was a model, and I used to get so excited about it. And when I got that pistol, that was fantastic to have that pistol. And we had to give those pistols up. Now the politician, this is a very interesting thing to actually touch upon. The politician that banned pistols in the UK, they interviewed him at the end of his career. And they said, are there any regrets you've had during your political career? And he said, yes, banning pistols.
Really?
He said, I took away a lot of people's sports, right, and it fixed nothing. It's easier for me to get a pistol in the UK now than it would have been to go through the licence protocol. I could go to London and find somebody to buy a pistol. So
You're
all
saying
it does
illegally.
Yeah. So it's just all gone under the radar, right? So it's fixed. It's all these days. It's all about image, rather than the actual net result, and that angers me and upsets me greatly that we even have to have these discussions. And social media can provide lots of great things, but it also provides 30-second experts, I call them.
Oh yeah.
And they look at this and go, "Oh, that's terrible. Let's ban bear hunting. That's terrible." People need to actually dig into the DNA of these things to get a better understanding of what's going on, and me included. I didn't know much about wolf hunting, and I thought, oh, well, I quite like wolves, but so I went out with a wolf hunter, and I learnt so much in that day, and now I'm better educated, and I can better present the argument. So, well, hang on a minute, the wolves that they've reintroduced there aren't necessarily the right wolves anyway.
Certainly.
Right? And there's so many of these stories, and actually the guy I went with said, there were native wolves left here. What killed them off? Well, the wolves they reintroduced because they're twice the size. I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but we're just becoming 32% experts on things, and then suddenly we form a judgment. And people listen to that. It's really terrible.
How do you feel about wildlife management on a national scale versus a regional scale? Meaning people here weighing in on how elephants should be handled in Botswana.
I think
versus the people there.
Go and live in Botswana for a while, and then we have the argument and the discussions, right? But elephants, that's a fantastic subject to discuss, right? There's probably too many people and there's too many elephants on the planet. They all need managing. We all need managing, right? And with elephants, if they're destroying crops, you can only cope with so many. And the thing is, what people need to remember about hunting is, if it's done correctly, if you go and shoot your elephant, you're going to be shooting a management elephant. It's an elephant that's probably near to starvation, old, and needs to be moved on. And nature isn't friendly, is it? Right?
No.
People need to go and see how lions die, how elephants die, and how all wildlife can end up. It's just, people don't see that. We have these nature programs where they call animals by names. They give them a human vibe to them. I mean, we're preaching to the converted because the kind of people that are going to listen to this podcast will probably entirely agree with us.
Sure, but maybe we can provide people with some perspective and some information that they can use in turn in discussions with others that may disagree with them. And if I may take a minute, I've got a couple of examples. We mentioned elephants. They need to be managed not as a species, but as a population, regionally. Each different area needs to have its elephants managed according to its habitat and carrying capacity. There are areas where, sure enough, elephants are endangered. In Africa, quite a few of them. There are other areas where they have destroyed their habitat to the point that it could take 600 years or more for it to recover. And folks listening, we talked about this in the recent podcast that I did with Austin Brown and Jock Strauss while hunting with Kovas Adventure Safaris, where you shot your buffalo. What is it now? 2 years ago? 2.5 years ago? Something like that. 18 months later, looked like a gigantic farm quality brush hog on a heavenly scale had come through there. Baobab trees that are 12 feet through, the trunks had been gnawed out with tusks to the point where they fell, and then the elephants shredded every branch. The place is a moonscape because the elephants have passed the carrying capacity of the land. And it's a travesty because trees like that, I mean, there's a tree there that elephants killed a couple of years ago that they believe was probably there when Christ walked the earth.
Not the one that we sat on and took the pictures, that huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
They're down and devastated now. The brush is just fractured. You wouldn't believe it. We've got a little hum that's just joined us here. Folks, we have a beautiful little fireplace in the background. Wood crackling here. I don't know if you can hear it.
An electric fan behind it, but something's happening.
Spreading the heat, yeah. So just bear with us, folks. Forgive the hum from the fan. I don't think we can turn it off. But while I'm thinking about it, I also wanted to recognize our friend Mark here, sitting with us, just listening, enjoying. He was one of the founding investors in Spartan, and we're going to hear from him soon in another podcast.
He's got an interesting story for sure.
Yeah.
That would be an entertaining podcast. But just getting back to what's happening in the world with animals and such like, look at the countries where they banned hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you don't give an animal a value, there is no value to it. And if you're a family in the middle of some poor country in Africa, right, and you've got no way of feeding your kids, you're going to kill what you can to... We'd all do it, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
What people need to appreciate about what hunting brings is the fact is it looks after whole village, whole ecosystem survival. It's not just the guy, the skinners, it's their families. What happened to us 2.5 years ago when they dropped off all the meat from the animals, didn't they, to the local communities?
Yes.
There's not exactly a lot of supermarkets floating around there, and even if there were, they wouldn't have the resources to use them. So it's a community thing. When you shot your giraffe,
Yeah.
people come out in the middle of nowhere. We worked out there was 4,200 meal portions from that giraffe.
8-ounce portions of protein, which is prized there. It's hard to come by.
So I don't know if I ever told you this, but flying out of Windhoek, there were 4 British ladies I ran into. And they said, well, what are you doing here? And I said, very well-to-do British ladies. I said, well, I've been hunting. And she said, well, this conversation stops because I don't agree with hunting. And I said, well, madam, you asked, have you got 20 minutes for me to better explain what that brings to the community?
Sure.
You know, these were well-educated ladies I was talking to. And I walked them through about how everybody gets involved with the process. It's not, you know, it's a community thing. It keeps villages alive. And there will be meaning. I'll get back to Scotland on this in a minute.
Sure.
But basically, I said, if that giraffe, we just shot a giraffe, 4,200 meals, right? There were skinners employed, there were trackers, there were guides, and then all their families, their extended families, and then the guides that we work with give them money, or they feed them, and they do all sorts. It's a great system. And guess what? These animals are going to die. So does that giraffe die of starvation, or do we allow somebody to come and pay for that giraffe to get killed, to employ the community to do all these things
and feed the community?
And feed the community. There is no argument here. Everything dies. So if it's going to die, let's manage it and let's do it properly.
Sure.
And I think when hunting is done well, that's a really, really good thing that we should all be proud of being part of. I've taken vegetarians and vegans out hunting in the past that have not understood it. And I said, come hunting with me and then go and spend a day on an intensive chicken farm. And then we'll decide. Now, I'm not judging intensive chicken farms. We need those things to feed everybody. But don't tell me that hunting is cruel. It's just a way of life. It's just what we do.
And how did those ladies react?
Well, the irony was she turned around and said, oh, we've been living off oryx all week. And I said, well, I rest my case. I mean, you couldn't make it up.
Sure.
Right? They'd formed a judgment, they'd formed a conclusion, but every vegan and vegetarian, I've done it quite a few times now, they've come out with me and spent a day with me. And I said, this may not end well. You know, we are going to make mistakes from time to time, right? But appreciate this. We respect the animal. We want to do it as good as we can. I want that animal to die well. And it's going to go into the food chain. It's all going to get used. Right? What is wrong with this? What is in our DNA that we've suddenly decided this is not fit for purpose? I mean, if vegans and vegetarians really wanted to assess the situation, every time you plough a field, you're killing something.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, or you're turning an area into a mass desert that doesn't sustain other animals or other wildlife anyway. So we could have a long debate on that. But bring that back to Scotland. So, Africa, yes, we've covered it off. Scotland is very much the same. The Victorians basically looked at this piece of land that wasn't really fit for arable. You can't do much with it. They turned it into these fantastic sporting estates, red deer, grouse, pheasants, etc., etc. Well, look at the wildlife, the positivities that come out from the other side. If you want to see where curlews are now, or black grouse, or capercaillie, you have to go to an estate to see them, right? The numbers have just plummeted everywhere else. So if there aren't keepers on those pieces of land managing the predators, those songbirds, the curlews, all these other birds, they're just not there anymore. So there's a lot of good success stories that come out of these hunting estates. Moreover, all these people that are going up to hunt in Scotland will want to stay in hotels. They'll want to eat in restaurants. They'll want to use the services, the community. What do they expect those communities to thrive off without the professional, the hunters coming up, the fishermen and such like? It's absolute mayhem. I can't believe, I get so upset and angry about this, and I'm trying to maintain some dignity here. But I'm really passionate about what I believe in, and I've had fantastic times up in Scotland, rose stalking, red deer. You've been up there, grouse stalking. I'm not a wealthy person, right? But I've enjoyed what Scotland has provided, and I would be immensely upset if my kids couldn't enjoy that, and moreover their kids couldn't enjoy it, because it brings a family together. Hunting something and eating that food is so much more real than going to a supermarket and buying something out of a plastic bag and bringing it back and watching a computer game.
And that is such a key, that a child understand where meat comes from, and better yet, have a hand in, a responsible part of providing that meat for the family. You know my son William, he helps me here on the podcast. He's our backcountry apprentice. He shot his first turkey, great big gobbler at the age of 7. And when I watched him, he helped me smoke that turkey on the barbecue, and then we fed the family on a Sunday evening with his turkey. The amount of pride in this little 7-year-old boy in the fact that he had provided for the family table, brought tears to my eyes. I was so impressed with that and grateful for that. I've never forgotten it.
And neither will he.
No. And, to think that could be taken away from our posterity is, well, it's unthinkable. So, shift gears for me just a little bit here and talk us through the progression of the loss of firearm, like the regulations that made it harder to have a firearm and to get a hunting permit in the UK, various parts.
It's very difficult because, I'm a big fan of the States. There's lots of things I don't like about the USA, but I'm a big fan that you have public lands. I'm a big fan that if I come and buy an elk license, that money's going in to look after those population of elk and look after that public land. We don't have public land in the UK. We have public land, but no public land that I'm aware of that you can go hunting on. Meaning, hunting can be very difficult and challenging to get into. I've done other podcasts on this, and basically, compared to the USA, and I say that, compared to the USA, to go out and hunt in the UK is hugely challenging and difficult, right? Understandable. We have a tiny landmass with a big population.
Sure.
But if people can't experience it, it's very easy to hate or dislike or be negative about something you don't get an opportunity to do.
Sure.
Right? And with that, it's a challenge. So it's easy for it to lose popularity, and it's easy for it to sort of ultimately get closed down.
Sure.
And I think that's what's happening. And what we've got in the UK is we've got fishermen, we've got people that like fox hunting, we've got people that like bird shooting, and people like deer shooting, blah, blah, blah. They don't really have a united community, a united presence, a united army, right? And I'm always saying we'd be far better and far more capable if we were all in the same boat, fighting our cause.
Sure.
We do have colleges in the UK where we teach gamekeepers, deer stalkers and such like. They do a great job, sort of forestry commission guys and blah, blah, blah. So there's one in the south, there's one in the middle, there's one in Scotland. And I do talks there. And I said, so I go there every year to talk to these students, and I said, guys and girls, because there's lots of girls doing it now as well, and they tend to be very good at it. I said, you need to be telling the story. You need to be telling the story about what you do in this community, because you're looking after a piece of land, you're managing that land, you're managing the deer, you're managing the birds and such like. You need to be a voice. right? And so I'm really adamant about trying to make those young people sort of shout about what they're doing, because
Sure.
there's a lot of good things that they do. And I said, have any of you written to your MPs about your fear of where you're going to be in 20 years? Because you've got Wales trying to ban bird hunting. You've got Scotland doing the same thing with the deer stalking, or making it almost impossible for people like you to come to the Scotland and hunt deer because you're going to have to do some test.
Sure.
Right? They want to kill it. There's no doubt. And so you should be writing to politicians, because a way of life will change and it will die.
Yeah.
And getting back to your son, for him not being able to shoot that turkey and feel that moment, which will stay with him for the rest of his life, is very, very sad for me.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter, Jenna, my oldest daughter, shot a roebuck. My youngest daughter she was pretty young at the time. She said, I really want to shoot a roebuck, Dad. And I said, well, you really sure you want to do? Because I never force anybody. I will never take somebody out guiding and force. I say, only you're in charge of that trigger, and if you're not going to ruin my day if you decide not to take that shot.
Sure.
Right? I'd rather us walk away, have a great event. If you feel comfortable, great, take it. If not, well, anyway, Emily, bless her, was so adamant she wanted to do what her big sister had done. So we went out one night. It's not a good ending to this story. Well, it comes round, but basically, I took her out. We got her lined up on a little roebuck, very comfortable. Stuck her on a Spartan bipod. Luckily, I don't make sort of bipods that help. And bullet went right over the back of the roebuck. Went clean missed. And I said, Emily, you missed it. And she said, Dad, I did not miss that, dear. And I said, yes, you did. But that happens, that's okay, nothing injured, we'll have another go. Well, I went back that night, and it was one of my early Swaro optics. Do you remember the turrets? Before they were lockable. And I had inadvertently swung that turret round.
Oh, no. So
it wasn't Emily's fault,
Yeah.
it was Dad's fault, 100% take it on the chin. And I said to her, I said, Emily, I don't know how to fess this up. But actually, you didn't screw that up. You probably were at the right place, but Dad did. We went out the following night, optics was set up correctly, we got a roebuck. Her face, just like William's face, was, she'd got this roebuck, we took it home, we butchered it all up, cooked it. There is nothing more human than that.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
there is nothing more human than that. And anybody that's trying to tell me that isn't being what a human is, I'm sorry, I strongly disagree. And that's the battle that we are now facing. We've almost got minority views now trying to govern. I know so many people that probably don't care either way, but they don't want to change our lifestyle. So I don't want people saying, Mr. Geary, what you're doing is cruel. And it's not cruel, it's what we are as humans.
Yeah.
And I do not run away from that. I really feel really adamant that my way of life is a way of life that I enjoy. When I die, I think I've had a good innings. What upsets me is if people after me can't do that same thing. If you want to live in a cardboard box, playing on computers, that's great, but don't take away what we have, what we enjoy with nature, what we enjoy with the animals, what we enjoy with wildlife. That's where I feel alive.
Yeah. I'm the same. Can I share with you a story from Mexico?
Yeah.
Very fascinating lady named Alice. Now, I was on a Coues deer hunt on a historic ranch, nearly 20,000 acres, in January with Mossberg. Took a lovely little Patriot Predator rifle in 6.5 PRC. You've shot those. You like
Very
them?
good.
Yeah.
Very good.
And had a wonderful hunt. And our host was an older lady named Alice. Her husband had passed away. Her children, very professional, successful people, lived in the U.S. Alice had been the editor-in-chief of a very successful newspaper in Los Angeles. Her husband was of Hispanic descent, but was an innovator in the electrical engineering world and quite notable at his craft. He was designing cutting-edge stuff back when nobody else was doing that yet in Los Angeles. A relative died and he inherited this ranch. It's about 2.5 hours south of the Mexican-American border. And for some reason, apparently about that time, this couple had had enough of the rat race. And they decided to move to Mexico. They took their 2 children, they raised them on this farm, this ranch that's out in the middle of nowhere, homeschooled them. Of course, they're both highly educated, so they were well qualified to do this. And some really unique things transpired. The ranch, by the way, I felt like I was going back to the 1930s when I went there. And with one exception, we had Wi-Fi. It wasn't fast, but you could get in touch with loved ones now and then. But beautiful, beautiful ranch, way out in the middle of nowhere. Long, long drive over very rough roads. And it had been in one of Pancho Villa's travel routes. He burned the neighboring ranch to the ground. I saw the foundation. And the famous Apache chieftain, Geronimo, properly pronounced Geronimo, was incarcerated right near there at one point when they captured him temporarily. Fantastic place to visit with wonderful history. At any rate, back to Alice. She came from LA, very anti-hunting. They had cattle. It's not really farmable land, but they had developed a relationship with a university just north of the border in America that did a lot of agricultural research. And so they invited a team of 4 or 5 university grad students to come down and intern on the ranch and do a study to help them determine how to increase their income so that they could continue to hold the family land and support themselves off of it. Well, they came and spent 6 weeks or whatever studying the place, and then they sat down at a table with she and her husband, her late husband now, he's passed away, but much to her surprise, they said, you need to open a hunting operation. It's the best way for you to sustain yourselves and preserve the wildlife and all that here on the property. Melt your socks off. And she said, well, I'd rather take birders out. We have a lot of unique birds here. And they said, well, we recommend you at least try it. Do a study group with each. Take a group of birders and take a group of hunters out and then decide. But you need to do something, clearly, right? Because you're going in the hole. So they invited 3 hunters down. And they invited a group of birders. Well, the hunters came first, and Alice went with them. She said, I'll do this on one condition, and that's that I get to accompany them and watch them do their thing, right? So I know that their presence on our farm here is right. Well, she went out every other day with the hunters because she had farm tasks, right? They hunted 5 days. I think 3 out of the 4 of them took nice deer. She was there for 2 or all 3. And the entire time these hunters were teaching her about her own land, saying, you know, showing her everything from bedding cover to the type of forage the deer prefer and how they react to weather patterns, showing her how to track, and then when they shot something, showing her how to butcher it and care for the meat and so forth, which she'd done a lot of. They raised sheep and cattle there. She'd done some of that. They had cowboys, vaqueros, that did most of it, right? And she said she didn't recognize how much she was enjoying it at the time. Before the hunters left, they surprised her with a question. They said, tell us in one word about your experience. And she said she blurted out the word beautiful and was so shocked at herself she covered her face with her hands. Well, 2 weeks later, the birders came. And she said for a week she drove them around and all they wanted to do was check a box. They'd look in the top of the trees, and as soon as they'd seen that bird, they'd check a box and they'd go on to the next one. She would try and pause and tell them what she knew about that bird's habits and its flight patterns, whether it was migratory, what it fed on, the types of insects and so forth that would hatch and provide, and when they had their young and all this. Not interested. She said that was one of the least enjoyable groups of people she'd ever met. And so she went back to her husband and said, I think we need to go hunting.
Yeah.
But she still wasn't convinced on a personal level that hunting and killing wildlife was acceptable. It was a financial decision that had to be made. A few months later, so this was in late January, early February, their group of Great Pyrenees dogs, they have the real thing, the old blood, looks like a small polar bear, and they just live with the sheep.
Yeah. I've seen them in the Pyrenees.
The dogs, half a mile from the ranch house, set up such a ruckus that they left their dinner and went down to see what was going on because it was near the sheep pens. They thought maybe something bad had gotten into the sheep pens. Well, they got there, and a group of coyotes, about 5 coyotes, had attacked a Coues deer buck, a mature buck. He was weakened by the rut to where he was pretty drawn down, right? You know how that happens. Yeah. He was still on his feet, but these 4 or 5 coyotes had nearly finished eating his hindquarters. And he was still up on his front trying to fight them off, right? They'd been at him for a long time. Well, he managed to drag himself down into this valley near the sheep pens. The coyotes are still harrying him and nipping pieces off. And she said, I saw for the first time how cruel nature is. She says, you don't die comfortably in nature. You starve, you die of disease, or you get devoured by something. It's usually you suffer, right?
Or you freeze to death.
You freeze to death, yeah. And she said, of course, we finished the elk off. We finished a couple of coyotes off too. And not the elk, excuse me, the Coues deer. And she pointed up to him, this buck's mounted in her kitchen.
Yeah.
And by the way, folks, those of you who know Coues deer, this was no mature buck. He measured, for those who care, 128 inches. 110 is Boone Crockett. He was a giant deer, right?
Yeah.
And these coyotes had still managed to take him down.
Yeah.
And she said that was the turning point for me. She said at that point I realized hunting is more humane, and good hunters that exercise good conservation take old mature animals near the end of their useful life cycle, provide those animals with a very kind death, and the meat goes to good use. And she said that was when I fully accepted in my heart that hunting was good.
But she had to be educated.
Yeah.
There's a lot of women and men like that never had that opportunity. I mean, I went fly fishing in Patagonia a couple of years ago, a bit like how I met Mark, and I was on this estancia, and there was a guy, a very well-to-do guy, who refused to kill a fish. And I said, super bright, very successful, and I said, well, I have a problem with you. I said, because if we follow your path, right, and you're refusing to kill a fish now and again, well, actually, one, you will kill a fish. You catch 100 fish, there will be a percentage of fish that will die.
Yeah.
We are just doing this for pure sport, right? I absolutely like to kill a fish now and again and eat one. I'll release lots of fish because I enjoy fly fishing.
Yeah.
But if the minute you turn that tap off and said, I'm never going to kill a fish, then what are we really doing?
Yeah.
You need to be able to do these things, and you need the freedoms and rights to do it, because as you said, nature is very, very cruel. And we need to be aware of that. We live in this like bubble of pretense where everything is actually all okay out there, and we give these animals names, and you see these nature programs. Watch a lion, a mature lion being killed by younger lions. Watch how wolves kill other wolves. Watch what elephants do. Watch how a rhino will treat the younger rhino. It's pretty nasty out there, right? If you can put a human in that loop that can extract an animal well, right, and the meat is used and people are paid for that process, it's a good system, and it's proven. Go to parts in Africa where they don't do it and look at the results.
There's nothing left.
There's nothing left.
Yeah.
So people, I'd encourage you to listen and look before you judge a hunter. Go to parts of Africa where they ban hunting and see what they've got, and then go to, and it could be South Africa, it could be Namibia, it could be Botswana, and see how when it's managed well, it's done beautifully well.
Yes.
And most hunters, and there's always the odd exception, but most hunters, most people I know that into our way of life are extremely conscientious, good, caring, wholesome human beings. Well, I would rather be part of that community.
As would I. So Rob, what words of wisdom, or even, dare I say, warning, could you offer to your American brothers over here, brothers and sisters in the hunting community, to help us? What should we avoid? What pitfalls do we need to watch for in regulation and in even perception of hunting
Well,
going forward, so we don't end up losing?
I think number one is education,
Okay.
followed by education, followed by education. Getting young people out to understand what enjoyment and what pleasures they can get out of the wilderness. So I would encourage everybody out there that's hunting, pick somebody, take a young person out that hasn't had the opportunity to hunt and take them hunting, right? Get women involved in hunting. Get women. So Scandinavia is actually an interesting one to discuss, and we should touch on that briefly, because Denmark is a place I think is actually turning in a good way.
Oh, good.
So in Denmark, I've got a few Danish hunters, and they said hunting became quite a challenge 15 years ago. It was unsexy, and if you walked around in Copenhagen with a camo jacket, people would not want to be with you. Now there's a turning point because women want quality food. They're really into wanting. I don't want to feed hormone injected animals to my kids and my family. So the female community is really growing in the hunting model in Denmark, and that's actually had a seismic impact. The other thing is, in Denmark they have one, and I'm not an expert on this, forgive me, but they have one sort of community that protects the hunting, the fishing and such like. So it's an aligned team. So I think, as the Romans used to say, divide and conquer, whatever.
Sure.
If you can build a good, strong community that's really got the ethos of hunting, not divided, you have a strong tool to help. Public land is huge, because without the public land, you will not have the little Jimmy from down the road being able to go and hunt.
Sure.
And I can absolutely bang that home in the UK. I got into climbing, Joseph, because I couldn't afford to hunt. So I went around climbing mountains instead of hunting. When I did manage to winkle my way in, I loved it, but I was relatively late to hunting. I used to shoot rabbits and squirrels as a kid, but I left it for probably 10, 15 years because I had no doorway to open. And then I got a great he's sadly dead now, but the guy that got me into hunting, dear old Jim Creedon, who very dry Scot, knew wildlife brilliantly. He was my mentor, you know, and I learned so much from Jim, just about wildlife, about nature and everything. And if everybody could have a Jim Creedon, we wouldn't be having this conversation. That's the truth. So get the kids out there, get them to understand nature, maybe switch the phones off now and again and get them out there and get them to experience it. So Doug today came up with a really good discussion, didn't he? So we're at this beautiful range, by the way.
The Day Mountain Range out of southeastern Idaho.
So we're here sitting by their lovely fireplace, and they warmly invited us here, and it's a wonderful place. But he was telling me he got more enjoyment out of getting people that had never shot to come and shoot at the range. And he had a musician come up here with some. Did you hear this, Mark?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so he had a musician come here with a family, and he did not want to shoot. He'd never even touched the gun. Lived in the States all his life, into musicians, music, blah blah blah. So I don't want to touch these things. And basically, Doug did a good job and said, well, why don't you just buy some of the smaller calibers with a model? Just try it. So he did, and he said, oh, that's actually quite. He said, by the end of the day, I think he had him shooting up to 1,300 yards.
Very cool.
And he said, he was just all smiles. And then he got in pistol shooting. He said, this is just magical. And he said, he was walking around outside, and forgive me, Doug, if I got this wrong, but I pretty much got the ethos of what it was about. And basically he said, he looked quite ashen and shocked for a time. And Doug said, are you okay? And he said, no, I'm having a bit of a moment here because I've been giving my extended family do a bit of shooting. And for the last 18 years, I've been giving them hell about firearms and guns and such. And now I've seen it.
Yeah.
So he changed. So he was meant to be going off to Nashville to do something. He changed his whole diary so he could come back and spend another day with Doug to shoot and get his apologies ready.
Yeah.
So finishing your question, and it's a very long drawn out answer, I'd say try and get more people out doing these wonderful things, because I have yet to take somebody out that doesn't enjoy shooting a gun.
Yeah.
They might, and particularly women and such like, they might have a preconception, think, oh no, I don't want to do this. But you get them behind the trigger, and there's something just hugely rewarding about hitting a bit of metal at 1,000 yards and hearing that refreshing noise. It's satisfying. Doesn't mean to say they need to go into hunting, but maybe they will, maybe they won't. But they'll certainly start that path of education and understanding. My Mrs. Magali, she's French, never understood hunting, never got it, thought it was cruel. She's not a big meat eater, but she's now got a stage where she says, how does she say? She says it very well. She said, I actually now feel a hypocrite for not hunting and going to the supermarket. I would never let her shoot something because she is such an animal lover. If it did go wrong, it would absolutely break her. But she completely understands the dynamics of what people like us around this table do.
And the great thing is, somebody that's found out how enjoyable shooting is, or understands the value of bringing home clean, wild game meat, how good it is for you, whether or not they're going to vote for you is not necessarily the important thing. They're not going to vote against you because they understand. They're not an uninformed vote casting weight for the other side.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think we can do a better job at better explaining things. I think we need a better platform to better explain things on what we do, because there was a lot of things in hunting that I didn't understand. I'm honest, I didn't understand them, so I thought, that's a bit cruel, and that's Europeans, a lot of them think shooting bear, shooting a bear. But they just don't understand it.
Bears are not all that cuddly. They eat baby bears. Bears are pretty cruel.
My son Max shot a bear, and she did her own cubs. It's just, but it's not like there's a lot of bears out there. Right? And there's a lot of things now where I floated down Frank Church Wilderness for 8 days on an elk hunt. I didn't see an elk. You get a tag to shoot a wolf. You get a tag and you get paid, I think it was $1,000 or $1,500 if you shoot one. And I met an old boy at the end of that trip, and he said, I've been coming here for 30 years. He said, this valley was full of elk. You'd have them whistling all over the place now. And he said, then there were lots of wolves. Now there's no elk, and we don't even see the wolves because there's nothing left.
Nothing left to eat.
So think about that, people.
Good informed management is so crucial.
And you see it in Africa. Where they do it well, it's really, really done to a very high standard.
And one other thing I'd like to add to your thoughts about being an ambassador to bring others into the fold, as it were, and that's to actually conduct yourself as a good example. And I had an experience with William this past fall. He had an elk permit, and it was late in the elk season. We only had a day or two left, and I said, let's run out after school and see what we can find. So there was just traces of snow on the ground. We got up high quickly and went up through some private land we had permission to cross, not to hunt on, but to cross, and got to the private land and started climbing hard. And we found an elk carcass from a bull that was probably about 10 to 15 days old, indicating it was shot right near the beginning of the season, right? Somebody had seen a herd of elk up there and probably hiked clear out around, done a good job of the actual hunt, found these animals, made a gut-wrenching effort to get one, and killed this bull cleanly in this little hollow. And as far as I could tell, all the meat was taken off the elk. That skull cap had been cut off of his head, right? So everything had been taken. All that was as it should be, I felt like. What horrified me and just made William's jaw drop, because he'd never seen how rubbish human beings can be. And I say that tongue-in-cheek, not tongue-in-cheek, but there's an innuendo there.
Yeah.
There was garbage all around this carcass. There were the little foil sheaths from the replaceable blades from the guy's Havilon knife. He dropped 2 Gatorade bottles, half a dozen Reese's peanut butter cup wrappers, a couple of other candy bar wrappers, and he clearly was just opening them and dropping them to the wind or throwing them over his shoulder as he worked on this elk. He got everything packed up. I don't know if he had a horse or backpack, but he got it out and left 30 pieces of garbage laying around his carcass. To me, that was so disrespectful and just absolutely unacceptable that somebody would have that kind of disregard for our public land that had just provided him and presumably his family with an awfully good winter's worth of eating.
Yeah.
There's no need. In 30 seconds, you can pick up those pieces of garbage and put them in the pocket of your pack and leave that place as clean as you found it.
How you found it?
Yes.
My son Max actually walks around with a plastic bag, picks up rubbish like that all the time.
Oh, we picked it up. We cleaned up the entire site. We took it out.
I just cannot comprehend what is going on in somebody's head to leave something like that. Yeah.
So anyway, folks, be respectful of the opportunities, the blessings you have, because I'll tell you, if an anti-hunter found that, they would use that. That would taint their opinion further. They would take pictures of it. They'd post it on social media. It would be a serious blow against the hunting community. Don't be that person.
No, it's social media is important. Another thing I don't like to see is somebody that's shot an animal and then they have their face blanked out. You have nothing to hide.
Own it.
If you own that, you killed that animal, right? If you're not prepared to stand up and show that, I think that really annoys me.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a personal thing, but I refuse to follow anybody that does that. I do not understand that.
Yeah. Well, and I think you and I both find great pleasure in sharing that bounty of the earth with friends, introducing people to wild game meat for the first time.
Well, Joseph, every time I come around to your house, we seem to do. Your daughters did a sterling job last time. You know, and they're lifetime memories.
Yeah, we have some fun.
Yeah, we really do.
And we like it when you come because you're a good luck charm.
Well, I'll keep on turning up, and I like coming and eating all the produce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I sure appreciate your insights, your thoughts here, folks. I don't know how to say this, how to express the importance of holding on to the freedoms we have. I feel like America right now is in actually a pretty good place as far as laws and regulations go, because there's more suppressor ownership than there ever has been. This is a huge thing, right? They used to be regarded as evil assassin's tools, right? There are more concealed carry permits, more legal, lawful, upstanding citizens carrying personal protection firearms than ever before. It's relatively straightforward, although certainly structured to purchase a firearm in any of the states. Some, California, Illinois, parts of the Northeast and so forth, are more challenging, especially where handguns and high-capacity firearms are concerned. But folks, let's hold on to what we have. Let's stand for ourselves. Let's stand up and be counted in support of our life's passions of hunting, of the wildlife that blesses us each year, and of the rights to own the hunting tools that we need to do that.
Well, I'm going to finish with something, Joseph. If the UK was one state in the USA, you wouldn't be able to own handguns. You wouldn't have any public land, right? And all of those scary little warnings I'm giving you, they're there.
Yeah.
Right? So just imagine the UK's on your doorstep, right? And it's an important thing to analyse. Yes, you've got California and New York where it might be more challenging and more difficult, but you still can do those things. In the UK, we can't. You know, I grew up with pistols and I'm not allowed to use pistols now. Just think about that, right? And your listeners should think about that, because it could happen here.
Yeah.
So I think you believe in these things. Hunting is a fantastic thing. It's what I live for.
Sure.
Right? So I don't want to give those things up.
Yep. And me as well. I'm with you. My family and my lifestyle as a hunter, my ability to protect and provide because of what I believe are our God-given laws here, that's what drives me.
Fundamental.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Mark, for joining us, sitting in with us here. Listeners, I would love to hear your feedback on this episode. We tend to kind of lean on gear and skills, how-to stuff on this podcast, but we have had some requests for a bit more conservation-minded content. I'd love to hear how well you liked this, other topics, related topics you'd like to hear about in the future, as well as personal or experiences or insight that you have that you can share with us. Please write in, ideally on Patreon. That's www.patreon.com/backcountry, where I give priority to all of the messages that come from our loyal listeners and supporters there. Secondarily, just write Joseph at backcountrypodcast.com. I confess, folks, that I'm so busy now that it sometimes takes me a couple weeks to get into that email inbox and go through those messages, but I do try and get to them all and answer them personally still, and hopefully I can continue to do that. Would love to hear from you. Anyway, I guess a final thought. Do you have any final thoughts for us, Rob?
I think we've covered it. I've covered my concerns quite well. I don't think there's anything that I can really add at this point. I'd like to hear what people think. I will finish by this. I did touch on this once before with Meat Eater TV, and I got quite a lot of criticism from the UK saying, well, it's not as bad as you think. I had 2 Americans that wrote, well, 6 people. 6 people actually complained about what I said. I phoned every one of them, because that's the kind of person I am. One of them got back to me, and he was a nice guy, and he was from up in the Midlands, and I said, well, what do you think I said that was wrong about the hunting? What do you, and he said, well, it's not that challenging to get into. I said, well, how did you get into hunting? He said, well, I used to shoot the local farmer's rats, and after 5 years he let me shoot some hinds, and I said, 5 years, right? We don't have public land here, right? People in America can go and get a rifle and go and shoot. So he said, yeah, I get your point. But I had 2 Americans that were living in the UK, one up in Scotland, one down south, and they said, look, I really listened to that and I really valued what you said, because I can't get into hunting. It's not like being back in home.
Yeah.
So there was 2 people that lived in the States, but then, anyway, so I rest on that. But I think, I'd love to hear from people and what they view. And I'm not saying I'm right about everything, far from it, but I think the writing's on the wall.
What's a good way to contact you? Obviously, folks can follow you on Instagram.
So I think it's Spartan_Mr. G, and I will get back to people. I might take a couple of weeks like you to get back to people, but I do get back to people.
Yeah, so send Rob a direct message there with your thoughts or whatnot.
And always I'm always fascinated to hear what other people's viewpoints are. And I get a lot of people contact me that have taken their kids out and used their products and such like, and that's very cool. So there's a lot of people that are getting their kids out hunting and getting them into it. And Western Hunt Expo, there was a lot of young people there. Something that I felt was really cool. I didn't see it this time, but there were school buses turning up, going in. That would never happen in the UK. Never happen in the UK. I'll finish one more thing. I turned up and I had your immigration officer. This was when I was coming to do an elk hunt here, which is, I didn't get an elk, but I paid $800 for the privilege, which is totally cool.
Yeah.
And the immigration officer said, "What are you here for, Mr. Gear?" And I said, "I'm coming on an elk hunt." And he shook my hand and he said, "Thank you, good luck." If I did that in the UK, I just couldn't see that happening.
Yeah.
There's a lot of passion still here, and that's very good.
Well, yeah, we love to have friends like you come and join us here too. And just, I've always appreciated your passion and your ambassadorship for the shooting sports, the hunting sports, your willingness to always go out of your way to help people to understand. So folks, if I have a final thought for you, it's simply this: stand and be counted. When your passion is at risk and your rights are being threatened, stand up and be counted. I don't care what your other political views are, your social views are, and so forth. But if you are an outdoors person, I almost said outdoorsman, woman or child, protect what you love.
And you don't have to get upset about it.
No.
You can have a calm, quiet, good conversation.
And we can all create that unity that I think, as you mentioned, like Denmark is developing, to be crucial to our future. Now, you and I are both getting long in the tooth, you know, compared
Me a
to
bit more than you, Joseph.
But, you know, I have a little boy reading his book in the next room right now. He's 9 years old. This fall, he'll have his first deer hunt, and he's tremendously excited. He's almost as excited as I am for this first hunt, right?
But I get such a buzz out taking people.
Yeah.
Such a buzz.
So right now, it's up to you and I and those like us in age and in passion to protect the future for those little ones that aren't able to do it for themselves yet.
I'll be very interested on how you feel about New Zealand when we come back from there.
Oh, that'll be fascinating.
Because that's a good, but that's got a lot of public land. And they've had their challenges over there, but they've united, and I think they're doing a great job. There are no native mammals in New Zealand, and their socialist government was trying to say, well, they should all be eradicated. Well, you might turn around and say, well, the humans weren't here either then.
Right.
So that's a hypocrisy in its own. But they've got a good, strong community in the hunting world, and they've done a very good job, and they've got their challenges, but it's a wonderful place to go and hunt.
I'm looking forward to that very much. And folks listening, I'm going there in a couple months with Adam Weatherby. We're going to be doing mostly DIY, supported DIY, with some pretty savvy locals that will be taking us into good spots, and then either hunting with us or leaving us for a time. And I look forward to bringing you some episodes from the field on that. And for our New Zealand listeners that hear this, I can't say how excited I am to be coming to your homeland finally. I've dreamed about this literally for decades.
You will have a great time. Yeah, they're very good hunters out there. They take it very seriously. They're fit people, and they spend a lot of time in that country.
I love to hear it. It makes better humans out of us.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate you.
Well, love to be here, as always, Joseph. Always fun.
Thanks for tuning in tonight, folks. I'm Joseph Von Benedict here with Rob Gearing and Mark Wheeler, and we will see you in the backcountry.